So welcome, Lianne. You're here from the Publishers Advertising Advisory Bureau.
I am.
So you're here just to tell us a little bit about what you do at the Bureau and to ask a few of the questions that many of us want answered. So maybe you could start off by just explaining the mission of the Bureau.
What we do is we provide advice on the content of an ad prior to publication. We also help our members formulate responses to complaints that they may receive about an advertisement. And we also represent the industry's interest to government and regulatory authorities who wish to amend legislation or put codes or guidelines into place. So that's really what we do.
And what are some of the challenges for publishers when accepting advertising?
I guess at the moment there's so many scams around. You know, we've had one running for about 2.5 years now on English bulldogs, and it just keeps going around and around in circles. And a lot of the scams they just morph themselves into another brand. But I guess the other thing is these days everything is done electronically, and part of the problem is you don't necessarily see the ad until the next day when you open the newspaper over your morning coffee. So part of our challenge is, I guess, to ensure that our clients are well educated so that they know what they have to comply with prior to setting their own advertisement. The ACCC see it is our responsibility because it's our publication, and what goes in there is our responsibility. So that's probably one of our big challenges, to try and A, educate our clients, and B, educate the ACCC and fair trading officers and those sort of regulatory authorities that it's not quite as easy as they think. So we have actually taken members of ASIC, ACCC and fair trading around to a number of the plants so they understand our processes and where we're coming from. So that seems to be working. Yeah. But it's still a challenge for a publisher when they accept an ad, because you just don't know what you're going to get in that space.
Yeah, a bit scary.
Can be.
So have there been any important legislative changes, particularly in Australia?
There's a lot of nationalisation of a lot of the legislation. We have the Australian Consumer Law, which is an amalgamation of all the Fair Trading Acts and the Trade Practices Act, which is happening now. It probably won't impact on the advertising side, which is what I'm interested in. We have the Credit Code, which is in every state and territory. That's been amalgamated into one law. There's a lot of other ones. I guess licensing for tradesmen, that's all becoming national, which will make it a lot easier for those that trade across borders. So therefore, if you accept an ad in New South Wales, you know that whatever the law is, it's going to be consistent if it goes to Victoria. So that's going to make it a lot easier for publishers.
So a lot of newspapers seem to accept advertising in good faith. Is this sufficient?
Up to a point. I mean, we have a number of pieces of legislation. The Trade Practices Act, there's the Therapeutic Goods Act and regulations. ASIC has their Operations Act. There's a number of pieces of legislation that say as long as we've accepted the ad in our ordinary course of business and have no reason to believe it to be misleading or deceptive, that's our publisher's defence, and at the moment that's working quite nicely. However, we do have a responsibility. If somebody was to come to a paper to place an advertisement, and for some reason you know, a lot of it works on gut feeling. So if you get that feeling that these people may be doing something that they shouldn't be, or maybe it's an inappropriate type of advertisement, well then you would make that choice then on whether you would go ahead and accept the ad.
A breach in copyright appears in your newspaper. Has your newspaper breached copyright, or is it just the advertisers?
It would depend on the circumstances and whatever the court decides on the day on the evidence presented to it.
Okay.
But I would suggest that if you know an image is being used and perhaps it's being photoshopped, then you wouldn't accept the advertisement.
But it is possible that the newspaper could be published.
It is quite possible, yes. There was an instance when one publisher actually had a photo of a painting which they incorrectly tagged, and that caused a bit of a problem, and they were taken to task at the courts.
And what are the main types of ads, you know, maybe examples for medical products that newspapers should be really cautious about?
I guess with medical products which come under the therapeutic goods advertising code, we have to ensure that all those ads making claims about what the benefits of taking that product is, and the claim can be as simple as come in and take vitamin C and echinacea now that it's winter time. That's considered to be a claim, even though it's not saying vitamin C and echinacea is great for colds. It's just saying, well, it's now winter. But there is an assumption that the general public will understand that that's what it's for. So that would actually require clearance. So it's up to us to ensure that the ad is cleared prior to publication. That's part of what we've been doing too. We've been going around talking to various publications on the responsibilities, and I guess this is a nice segue into saying that we actually have just bought our booklet, which is about 30 pages on advertising of therapeutic goods and devices and services.
Right.
So
keep an eye out.
Keep an eye out.
In terms of copyright breaches, what are the main trouble that advertisers can get themselves into?
When they're a bit naughty and they decide that they'll lift something off the internet, when they'll scan an image, all those sorts of things which they tend to do, probably without thinking, because you sort of think, well, there's the internet, so it's on the internet, so it's in public domain. Well, no, you often find we had an instance where somebody had downloaded a photo of a Australian rugby match, and the real estate agent that was advertising, his colours were green and gold, but he decided to change the Australian jersey to green and gold stripes, and he decided to superimpose his own face in the photo that was being held up in the air. Forgive my lack of knowledge of what that's called, but being held up in the air. Now, apart from breaching intellectual property, because it's whoever owns the photo, he's downloading it off another person's site. So there's a lot of issues there. So it's not just a case of breaching once, you may be breaching a couple of times.
What should account executives do if they're concerned about a particular advert that comes through?
Well, they could call their Publishers Advertising Advisory Bureau, because we always like to hear from our members, but they can even call prior to going out to a client if you're not sure on the legislation, or maybe there's professional codes. At last count, there are about 160 odd pieces of legislation across the country, and we have 137 professional, industry and association codes just on a little database that we've constructed, all impact on advertising. So given that that's our role and that's our area of expertise, if they just ring us, it's just a phone call away, or email, whatever's easy.